In the silence of the houses where light only glimmers from nightlights, there are scary secrets waiting. When you're home alone, a feeling of security can quickly turn into extreme fear. Strange sounds, shadowy figures, and unexplained events can make you feel like a predator is stalking you. Let's explore 5 extremely disturbing things that happen to people like you when they faced loneliness and insecurity in their own homes. Story 1. Intruder from the darkness. Liam, an 18-year-old boy, was looking forward to a quiet week when his father and stepmother went on their honeymoon, leaving the large and quiet house to themselves. His brother's old bedroom, located on the 2nd floor, became the ideal refuge for long nights of undisturbed gaming. The dim lights from the screen reflect on the wall, mixed with the familiar sounds of the matches, creating a safe and private space. But one night, while Liam was immersed in the game, a strange sound began to creep into the air. At first, it was just gentle crunching sounds like something rubbing against the wall outside. He tried to ignore it, turning up the volume of the game, but the scratching sounds became clearer and clearer, as if they were crawling close to his eardrums. Liam felt insecurity welling up in his heart. The room is on the 2nd floor, completely isolated from the ground, so what could make that sound? A chill ran down his spine as he decided to stand up and walk towards the window. Outside, darkness covered everything, and only pitch-black night responded to his searching eyes. Liam couldn't see anything through the fogged glass, but the constant noise urged him on. He left the window open a small crack, enough to hear more clearly if the sound continued. Still nothing out of the ordinary other than eerie silence. As soon as I turned my back to return to my seat, a cold air suddenly flooded into the room. Liam was startled, his eyes widening when he discovered the window was now wide open. Outside, in the thick darkness, a shadowy shape was slowly creeping in through the doorframe. Thin and dirty fingernails clung to the door, little by little, dragging the shapeless body into the room. Liam was stunned, his heart racing as he realized the intruder was gradually getting closer. In an instant, he rushed forward, using all his strength to push that person back out. A terrifying screech rang out as the intruder tried to cling to the door frame, but Liam's strength was enough to make him let go and fall to the bottom. The thudding sound of the body hitting the bushes 2 stories below echoed in the quiet space. Liam stood still, his heart still beating loudly in his chest, his eyes staring into the darkness outside. He expected to hear a cry of pain or some sign that the intruder had been injured, but nothing. After a few minutes, the black shadow seemed to disappear into the night, leaving no trace, as if he had never existed. In the darkness of the room, there was only eerie silence, and Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he would return, quietly, unexpectedly, the way he had come. Story 2. Strange sounds in a rainy night. On a rainy night on Long Island, heavy drops of water fell on the roofs and streets, mixing with the howling wind to create a cold and gloomy background music. Ian, a teenager who was home alone, decides to invite Carl, his close friend, over to dispel the loneliness of the long night. The two texted each other, with Carl promising that he would be there in just 2 minutes. Ian, while getting ready for an evening of entertainment with snacks and video games, suddenly heard a strange noise from the backyard. The sound of the gate slamming shut. An unexpected sound on a rainy night made Ian immediately feel confused and anxious. Carl had arrived, but why did he appear in the backyard instead of entering through the front door as usual? Filled with anxiety, Ian walked out into the rain, where darkness and occasional flashes of lightning illuminated the dim garden. The weak light from the street lamps was obscured by the rain, turning everything darker and scarier. Ian felt a coldness spread throughout his body when he realized his warehouse door was wide open, light shining strangely from inside. Carl never went into the warehouse without a reason, and this made Ian even more concerned. Ian, with every step weighed down by rising fear, approached the warehouse. Suddenly, the lights in the warehouse went out, engulfing everything in darkness. His heart pounded loudly. Unanswered questions rang in his head. At that moment, the phone in my hand vibrated. The screen lit up in the darkness. A message from Carl appeared, a reminder that he was somewhere nearby. Ian felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the strangeness of the situation. He glanced at the warehouse door, and in the blink of an eye, it suddenly slammed shut, as if forced by an invisible force. Unable to hesitate any longer, Ian turned and ran straight home, leaving the warehouse behind like a ghost on a rainy night. When he opened the door, Carl stood there, drenched in rainwater but his face full of wonder. Ian immediately called the police, telling the story with overwhelming fear. When the police arrived, they headed straight toward the warehouse, flashlights scanning the dark space. Ian stood from afar, eyes watching, heart pounding in his chest. The warehouse door, which just a moment ago was closed, now opened again, as if nothing had ever happened. Inside, there was no sign of intrusion, not a single person, only emptiness and a creepy feeling creeping throughout the space. Outside, the rain was still falling, its sound echoing on the roofs and streets, a reminder that there were things in the dark, things hidden in the rain, that humans could not fully understand. Even though everything seemed to be back to normal, Ian knew clearly that tonight something had happened and left an indelible mark on his mind. Story 3: Ghosts in the Basement. Chris, a 45-year-old man, often works late at night, so his family went out to dinner without him. However, that night was different. Chris's work finished earlier than expected, giving him a few precious hours alone at home, a rare calm in his busy life. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chris decided to go to the basement room, where he could relax and watch TV in peace. The space in the basement is always a bit gloomy and cold, but it is Chris's favorite place, a place where he can completely escape the hustle and bustle of life. However, just as he was immersed in his favorite show, a strange sound rang out from the backyard. It was soft, almost drowned out by the sound of the TV, but enough to get Chris' attention. His heart beat faster when he realized the sound was coming from the basement window. In the dim darkness, Chris saw the window slowly open, and a strange head poked in, cold eyes scanning around the room as if looking for something. Chris immediately held his breath, his body frozen in panic, trying not to make any noise. He hid behind the couch, trying to keep his heartbeat from echoing too loudly in his chest. The stranger, after seeing nothing unusual, slowly withdrew his head and closed the window. Chris didn't wait another second. He rushed up the stairs on shaky legs, clutching a baseball bat that he always kept in the house for emergencies. His heart was pounding, each beat becoming more distinct as he turned off all the lights in the house, plunging the space into absolute darkness. Chris stood waiting in the kitchen, his eyes never leaving the back door. Time seemed to last forever. Each passing second was a test for Chris's nerves. Then, suddenly a hand reached through the pet door, fingered the door lock, trying to turn it open. Chris had no time to think. He swung the baseball bat with all his strength, aiming straight at that strange arm. A pitiful scream rang out immediately. The stranger withdrew his hand and disappeared into the night, leaving behind terrifying silence. Chris stood there, still clutching the stick, cold sweat running down his spine, his every breath mingling with the stillness of the night. Just a few minutes later, sirens roared on the street. Police cars parked in the neighborhood, red and blue lights flashing in the darkness. Chris looked out the window and saw police converging on a house 3 houses further away, bright lights illuminating the area like day. After the situation gradually became clear, Chris learned the scary truth. One of his neighbors, who lived 3 houses away, was murdered. When his wife returned, she discovered that the house had been ransacked, valuable belongings had been taken, and the most horrifying thing was that her husband was lying dead on the kitchen floor, blood flowing from the stab wound on his head, soaking him. Carpet. Chris felt a chill run down his spine as he thought about it. The intruder he had repelled might have come to do the same to him. Chris's house has never seemed so quiet, but now, that silence no longer brings peace. It was just a veil of fear, a fear that would haunt him throughout the long nights that followed. Story 4, Nightmare in the Snowy Night. And a young girl spent a snowy Friday night when everything around the house was covered in white and eerie silence. Her parents went out to dinner, her sister went out with friends, and Anne was home alone, enjoying the quiet of the winter night by taking a nap in a warm bed. But Anne's sleep did not last long. She was awakened by a loud banging sound in the room. The sound was so clear, echoing from her closet door. A feeling of anxiety crept into her mind, but Anne tried to stay calm. With what little courage she had left, she stood up, walked to the closet door, and opened it. It was dark inside, only emptiness and hanging clothes. There was nothing unusual, but for some reason the fear had not left her. Anne closed the closet door and returned to bed, but as soon as she turned around, a terrible scene met her eyes. Under the bed, a man's head was staring at her, his eyes expressionless and cold, and screamed in panic, his limbs frozen in fear. She fell to the floor, but before she could do anything, the closet door behind her suddenly opened again. A strong hand reached out, grabbed her tightly, and pulled her inside the closet. So the man crawled out from under the bed and appeared in front of Anne while she was being held tightly. They quickly tied her hands, gagged her mouth with tape, and then dragged her down the stairs into the cold darkness of the house. They moved quickly, carefully checking around to make sure no one could see, before opening the door and carrying Anne out into the snow-covered night. They led her toward the car, where they planned to stuff her into the trunk and disappear into the night. But when we were halfway there, a group of teenagers riding bicycles passed by. The headlights from their bicycles illuminated the horrifying scene unfolding. Some of the young men shouted, warning the others, and a few of them stopped and started moving towards the 2 kidnappers. The 2 men realized that the situation had become dangerous. They quickly dropped Anne on the ground, rushed to the car, and drove away with the sound of the engine screeching. Anne lay there, completely conscious in chaos and terror. Snow continued to fall, covering everything in a thick white blanket, but for Anne, that white no longer brought peace. In her waking moments after being rescued, Anne couldn't help but wonder why they didn't attack her while she was still sleeping. Perhaps it was just a sick psychological game, an attempt to scare, or maybe they had other intentions but were hindered by the sudden appearance of the young men. But what is certain is that horrifying incidents like these are not just fabricated stories. They happen in real life, posted on the news as reminders that in this world, safety is just a thin shell, which can be penetrated at any time, even on a snowy night. Fall silently. Story 5, Stranger in the Storm. Garber, a young man of 22 years old, still lives with his parents in the family house. As the youngest child, he was used to his 2 siblings moving out, leaving him alone in the large, quiet house. Garber's parents often went out, leaving him alone in the evenings, but tonight something was different. A thunderstorm was raging outside, the wind whistling through the windows, bringing insecurity lurking in the air. In his bedroom, Garber was trying to relax, trying to ignore the sound of the wind and rain, but another sound caught his ears. It wasn't the sound of rain falling, but a light tapping sound on the window. At first, Garber thought it might just be a branch or something blown by the wind, but then a second stronger thump rang out, startling him. The feeling of anxiety began to creep into his mind. his heart beat stronger. Garber, even though his heart was pounding, still approached the window. He lifted the curtain, his eyes squinting to see through the damp glass and the thick rain. Outside, under the dim light from the streetlight, he could see a figure standing there. The figure was blurry and indistinct in the storm, but Garber knew he certainly didn't recognize this person. The feeling of insecurity turns into real fear. He closed the curtains immediately but couldn't leave the window. As Garber stood there, another banging sound was heard, this time stronger, as if something had been thrown straight at the window. He opened the curtain, this time not only lifting the curtain but also opening the window, shouting through the sound of wind and rain, asking the stranger what he wanted. The man below looked up, his face distorted by the rain, and only said strangely that he wanted to show Garber something. Garber felt he had no choice but to call the police. He rushed downstairs, grabbed the phone, and quickly dialed the emergency number. When police responded, they asked Garber if he was sure he did not know this person and if he had caused any damage. The operator asked Garber to call back if the person continued to harass or showed signs of wanting to break in. Hanging up, Garber felt the need to take a closer look at the man, hoping to find some sign to understand the situation. He opened the kitchen window curtains and tried to look through the glass. As he did so, the man stood there, silent, staring at Garber. This time, Garber called the police again, reporting that the stranger had moved to his kitchen window. The police operator assured him that they would send someone immediately. But when Garber looked again, the man was gone, as if he had never existed. The storm was still howling outside. The house was still empty and quiet. But that silence now only increased the feeling of panic. That was the last time Garber saw the man, and no trace of him was found afterward. This story, part of a series of creepy home alone experiences, will forever haunt Garber, a reminder that even in the most familiar home, safety can be disrupted at any time. At any time, especially on a stormy night, when darkness and fear easily invade the minds of lonely people. When night falls and darkness prevails, scary stories are more than just a product of the imagination. They are reminders that security can easily be shaken. Remember, every strange noise, every fleeting shadow could be a sign of something waiting. Don't let fear take over, but let it become your motivation to always be vigilant. Because in this world, nothing is certain, and mysteries are always hidden right in your own home. Keep yourself alert, because unexplainable things can happen at any time.